Have you ever noticed how the moment everything becomes quiet, your mind suddenly grows louder? When the phone is put down, when the noise fades, when there is nothing left to distract you, an uneasy feeling begins to rise. That discomfort is not random. It is not a flaw in you. It is a sign that something important is being revealed. The mind often uses constant thinking as a form of protection, even though it rarely feels that way. On the surface, overthinking looks exhausting and unhelpful, but underneath, it serves a purpose. It keeps attention moving so deeper emotions do not have to be felt. When the mind is busy planning, worrying, replaying conversations, or imagining outcomes, it creates distance from discomfort. Thinking becomes a shield that prevents direct contact with fear, sadness, loneliness, or unresolved pain. As long as the mind stays occupied, those emotions remain in the background, muted but not healed. This avoidance is usually unconscious. Most people are not choosing to overthink. The mind learned this habit early as a way to stay safe. If feeling was once overwhelming or unsupported, thinking became a substitute for feeling. It offered control where emotions felt unpredictable. However, this constant mental activity comes at a cost. While it protects in the short term, it also keeps emotions trapped beneath the surface. They do not disappear. They wait. Over time, the shield of thinking can become heavy. It drains energy and creates restlessness, anxiety, and disconnection from the present moment. True relief does not come from thinking more clearly, but from realizing why the mind refuses to slow down. When this is understood, thinking can soften, and the emotions it was hiding can finally be met with compassion rather than avoidance. Stillness has a way of removing the layers we use to stay distracted. When external noise fades and mental activity slows, there is nothing left to buffer the inner experience. This is why stillness can feel so confronting. Without constant stimulation, the emotions that were pushed aside no longer have anywhere to hide. Feelings that were delayed, ignored, or minimized gently rise to the surface. Not because they want to overwhelm you, but because they finally have space to be felt. In daily life, distractions are everywhere. Screens, conversations, tasks, and constant thinking keep attention outward. These habits create the illusion of stability, but they also prevent emotional processing. Stillness interrupts this pattern. It removes the usual exits. In that quiet, the body begins to speak in sensations, tightness, heaviness, warmth, or restlessness. The mind may label this as discomfort, but what is actually happening is awareness. This exposure can feel intense at first because the nervous system is unfamiliar with being present without escape. Stillness does not create the emotions. It reveals what was already there. When allowed without resistance, these emotions begin to soften. They move, change, and eventually settle. Stillness becomes less threatening when it is understood as a doorway rather than a trap. It is not demanding solutions. It is simply asking for attention, patience, and a willingness to stay with what is real, one moment at a time. Discomfort that arises in the present moment is often mistaken for danger. When unfamiliar sensations surface, the mind quickly interprets them as something that must be avoided or fixed. This reaction is natural. The nervous system is wired to seek what is known and predictable, even if what is known includes stress and overthinking. Presence, on the other hand, is unfamiliar territory for many people. When the mind slows and awareness turns inward, the lack of distraction can feel unsettling, not because something is wrong, but because it is new. This unfamiliarity triggers uncertainty. Without constant mental narration, the mind feels exposed, as if it has lost control. Sensations such as restlessness, heaviness, or emotional vulnerability can arise, and the mind labels them as threats. In reality, these sensations are signals of adjustment. They show that awareness is shifting from avoidance to contact. Discomfort, in this context, is a transitional state, not a warning sign. When discomfort is met with curiosity rather than fear, its intensity often decreases. The body begins to recognize that presence is safe. Over time, what once felt uneasy starts to feel grounding. Familiarity replaces fear. The mind learns that it can exist without constant activity, and the nervous system settles into a quieter rhythm. Discomfort was never the enemy. It was simply the feeling of stepping into something new. Asterisk avoidance through overthinking may feel like relief in the moment, but it quietly delays healing. Each time the mind turns away from an uncomfortable feeling by analyzing, planning, or distracting itself, the emotion remains unresolved. It does not dissolve simply because it is ignored. Instead, it stays stored in the body and nervous system, shaping reactions, moods, and patterns beneath conscious awareness. Over time, this avoidance can create a sense of emotional stagnation, where the same struggles repeat despite constant mental effort to understand them. Healing requires contact. Emotions need to be felt to be processed, and feeling only happens in the present moment. When attention is trapped in thought, the body is left behind. Overthinking keeps emotions intellectualized rather than experienced. This can create the illusion of progress while preventing real release. Insight without presence rarely leads to change. The longer avoidance continues, the more sensitive the emotions become. What could have been gently felt earlier may later feel heavier simply because it was postponed. Yet healing does not demand perfection or force. It begins the moment avoidance is noticed with kindness rather than judgment. Turning toward discomfort, even briefly, interrupts the cycle. With time and patience, the mind learns that facing emotions does not lead to collapse. It leads to clarity, relief, and a deeper sense of self-trust that thinking alone could never provide. Asterisk, learning to stay. Present is not something that can be rushed or controlled through effort. Presence grows through gentleness, not force. Many people approach it as a task to master, expecting immediate calm or clarity. When that does not happen, they assume they are doing it wrong. In reality, presence unfolds gradually, shaped by patience and self-compassion. The mind and nervous system need time to feel safe without constant distraction. Forcing presence often creates more resistance. Trying to silence thoughts or suppress emotions can feel aggressive, as if parts of the inner world are being pushed away again. True presence is an allowing. It is noticing what arises without demanding it to change. Some moments will feel peaceful, others restless or emotional. All of them belong. Progress is not measured by how calm you feel, but by how willing you are to stay. Small moments of awareness are enough. A few conscious breaths, a pause before reacting, or a brief check-in with the body builds trust over time. Each gentle return to the present teaches the system that it is safe to be here. Slowly, presence becomes less intimidating and more supportive.